Security. Remove this woman before she steals something from our guests. Victoria Sterling's shrill voice echoed through the Grand Metropolitan Hotel's marble lobby. Her $4,000 Hermes bag swung as she grabbed Amara Davis's arm, fingernails digging into black skin. I don't care what fake invitation you printed at Kinko's, Victoria hissed loud enough for the entire crowd to hear. You people always try to sneak into places you don't belong. Amara felt 30 pairs of eyes burning into her. The registration desk clerk backed away. 2 security guards approached, hands moving toward their radios, phones lifted higher, recording everything. Hey, white executive laughed. Probably here to clean the bathrooms. Victoria's grip tightened. Exactly. The help entrance is around back, sweetie. With the other service staff. Amara's hands trembled, not from fear, but from the effort of staying silent. Her laptop bag felt impossibly heavy. Inside, her phone buzzed with messages from legal team and board of directors. Have you ever watched someone destroy their entire future with a single moment of pure hatred? The digital conference clock above the registration desk glowed red. Executive session begins 8 minutes. Victoria's manicured fingers remained clamped around Amara's wrist like a vice. The hotel's crystal chandeliers cast harsh shadows across faces that had turned toward the commotion. Some curious, others uncomfortable, many already filming. Ma'am, please let go of me, Amara said quietly, her voice steady despite the tremor in her chest. Victoria's laugh was sharp as breaking glass. Or what? You'll call your lawyer. She turned to the growing crowd of executives. Ladies and gentlemen, this is exactly why we need better security at these events. The hotel manager, a thin man in his 50s named Robert Caldwell, emerged from behind the concierge desk. His eyes immediately assessed the situation. Expensive white woman versus modestly dressed black woman, and his allegiance crystallized instantly. Is there a problem here, Mrs. Sterling? His voice carried the practice difference reserved for VIP guests. This woman is trying to crash our private breakfast meeting, Victoria announced, finally releasing Amara's arm, but stepping closer, crowding her space. She has some obviously fake invitation and refuses to leave. Conference begins 7 minutes. Amara reached into her portfolio slowly, deliberately, and withdrew the embossed invitation. The paper was thick, expensive cardstock with gold foil lettering. She handed it to Caldwell without a word. He barely glanced at it. Ma'am, I'm going to have to ask you to wait in the lobby while we verify this. Verify what? The voice came from Dr. Patricia Wong, a tech CEO who'd been watching from near the elevators. She approached with confident steps, her own invitation in hand. The invitations are standardized. Same printer, same format. Victoria whirled around. Patricia, don't be naive. Anyone can print something that looks official. Really? Dr. Wong held up both invitations side by side. Same watermark, same serif font, same RSVP code format. She looked directly at Victoria. Unless you're suggesting she's running some elaborate counterfeit operation for a breakfast meeting. A few executives shifted uncomfortably. Phones continued. Recording. Somewhere in the crowd, a woman whispered to her companion. This is getting ugly. Conference begins. 6 minutes. Victoria's cheeks flushed pink. Beneath her foundation. Look, I'm just trying to protect the integrity of our event. We can't have random people. Random people. Dr. Wong's eyebrows arched. You mean black people? The lobby went silent except for the tick of expensive watches and the distant hum of elevators. Even the hotel staff had stopped moving. Victoria's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. That's not I never said. You didn't have to. The voice belonged to Marcus Thompson, a venture capitalist. Amara recognized from Forbes covers. He stepped forward, his dark skin creating an immediate visual parallel. We all heard what you said, you people. The help entrance. Should I continue? Amara felt a strange calm settling over her. She recognized this moment, the tipping point where bystanders chose sides. Some would speak up, others would retreat. A few would double down on the wrong side of history. Victoria chose the latter. Fine, she snapped, pulling out her phone. Since no one else will handle this properly, I'll call the police myself. Trespassing is trespassing. The words hit the room like a thunderclap. Several executives stepped Back instinctively, Dr. Wong shook her head in disgust. Marcus Thompson pulled out his own phone and began recording. "Ma'am, please don't do anything hasty," Caldwell said, though his tone suggested he was more worried about publicity than justice. Victoria was already dialing. "Yes, I need police at the Grand Metropolitan Hotel. We have a situation with an unauthorized person trying to gain access to a private corporate event." Amara's phone buzzed against her hip. She glanced down at the screen. Incoming Sarah Kim, Chief Legal Counsel. Another buzz. Incoming James Rodriguez, Head of Security. Then another incoming. TechFlow Board Emergency Line. She let them all go to voicemail. Instead, she opened her notes app and began typing every word Victoria had spoken. Every action, every witness. The hotel manager's immediate bias, the exact timestamps. Her corporate legal training had taught her that documentation was everything around her. The drama continued to unfold. Victoria paced while waiting for police, her voice carrying across the marble expanse as she provided a description that somehow made Amara sound both threatening and pathetic. "Yes, she's about 5 feet 6 inches, black female, probably late 20s, wearing cheap clothing, carrying some kind of briefcase or bag. No, I don't think she's armed, but you never know with these people again." Dr. Wong was now openly arguing with Victoria, their voices rising. Marcus Thompson had positioned himself protectively near Amara, his camera still rolling. A small crowd of supporters was forming. Not a majority, but enough to make Victoria's isolation increasingly obvious. Yet, 3 other executives had moved to stand behind Victoria. Silent supporters who hadn't spoken, but whose body language screamed agreement. Their phones were out, too, not recording the confrontation, but apparently texting each other and outside contacts. Amara caught fragments of their whispered conversations. These diversity initiatives have gone too far. Probably some affirmative action higher. Trying to network above her level. Good for Victoria for having the courage to say what we're all thinking. The elevator dinged. 2 police officers emerged, one white, one Latino, both looking like they'd rather be anywhere else. The white officer, whose nameplate read Martinez, surveyed the scene with tired eyes. Someone called about a trespassing situation. Victoria rushed forward, her designer heels clicking against marble. "Yes, officer. This woman is trying to gain unauthorized access to our private corporate event. She has a fake invitation and refuses to leave the premises." Officer Martinez looked at Amara, then at the crowd of executives in expensive suits, then back at Amara in her simple blazer. His expression suggested he'd seen this script before. "Ma'am," he said to Amara, "can I see some identification and your invitation to this event?" Amara nodded calmly and reached into her portfolio once again, but this time, as her fingers brushed against her business cards, she felt the slight raised texture of something else, something Victoria and the others hadn't seen yet. Her VIP access badge, the one that identified her not as an attendee, but as something far more significant. She handed Officer Martinez her driver's license and the invitation, but kept the badge hidden for now. Timing was everything in situations like this. "Everything appears to be in order," Martinez said after examining both documents. He looked at Victoria. "Ma'am, this is a valid invitation to your event. I don't see any grounds for trespassing charges." Victoria's face turned red. "That's impossible. Look at her. Does she look like she belongs at a so-eyed executive breakfast?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Every person in that lobby knew exactly what she was asking, and every phone camera caught her asking it. "Officer." Martinez's jaw tightened. His partner, Officer Chun, stepped closer to Victoria. "Ma'am, what exactly do you mean by that?" And in that moment, with sirens wailing faintly in the distance and dozens of cameras recording, Amara Davis made a decision that would change everything. She pulled out her business card. The business card fell from Amara's fingers like a white flag of surrender, or perhaps a declaration of war. Victoria snatched it before Officer Martinez could react. Her eyes scanned the simple black text, and for a moment, her face went blank. Then confusion flickered across her features. "Amara Davis, Chief Executive Officer," she read aloud, then laughed. "A sound like Breaking Crystal. CEO of what? Your little Etsy shop?" You're cleaning. Business. The crowd pressed closer. Dr. Wong stepped forward to read over Victoria's shoulder, and her expression changed completely. Marcus Thompson moved to get a better view, his camera still rolling. Techflow Industries. Victoria continued with mock seriousness. Never heard of it. Probably some tiny startup in someone's garage. She held the card up, like evidence in a trial. Officer, this just proves my point. She's clearly delusional if she thinks, ma'am. Officer Martinez's voice cut through her monologue. May I see that card? Victoria handed it over reluctantly. Martinez examined it carefully. The raised lettering, the heavy card stock, the subtle holographic security strip along the bottom edge. His partner, Officer Chun, looked over his shoulder. This is high-quality printing, Chun observed quietly. Corporate grade. So Victoria's voice rose an octave. Anyone can order fancy business cards online. But something had shifted in the room's energy. Dr. Wong was staring at Amara with new recognition dawning in her eyes. Marcus Thompson had lowered his phone slightly, his mouth forming a small O of surprise. Techflow Industries, Dr. Wong said slowly as if testing the words. That's the company sponsoring this entire summit. The lobby erupted into whispers. Executives who had been filming now lowered their phones uncertainly. The hotel manager, Caldwell, looked like he might be sick. Victoria's laugh became shrill. That's impossible. Techflow's CEO is probably some old white man in Silicon Valley. This woman is clearly what? The voice belonged to Senator Janet Morrison, who had just emerged from the elevator with her security detail. The 70-year-old black woman commanded immediate attention as she walked toward the group, her silver hair gleaming under the chandeliers. Senator Morrison, Victoria stammered, her aggressive posture wilting slightly. I didn't realize you were attending. I'm giving the keynote address, Morrison replied coolly. About diversity and corporate leadership. How timely. Her eyes moved to Amara, then to the business card in Officer Martinez's hand. May I? The officer handed over the card. Morrison studied it, then looked directly at Amara. Ms. Davis, it's an honor to finally meet you in person. The words hit the crowd like a physical blow. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Phone cameras swiveled back toward Amara, who remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable. Victoria's voice cracked. You know her? I know of her, Morrison corrected. Techflow Industries is one of the fastest-growing tech companies in the country. Founded 8 years ago now. Valued at over $2 billion. Ms. Davis was featured on the cover of Forbes last month as one of America's most influential young CEOs. The silence that followed was deafening. Caldwell, the hotel manager, looked like he wanted to disappear into the marble floor. The executives who had been supporting Victoria began edging away from her, suddenly finding their phones very interesting. But Victoria wasn't finished. Cornered animals fight hardest, and she was nothing if not cornered. I don't care what magazine she was on, she said, though her voice had lost its earlier confidence. This is still a private event, and if she really is who she claims to be, where's her VIP badge? Where's her security detail? Why is she dressed like she gestured vaguely at Amara's simple attire? Like what? Senator Morrison's voice was dangerously quiet. Like she can't afford proper business attire. Victoria finished, doubling down on disaster. The crowd's collective intake of breath was audible. Even her supporters had now completely distanced themselves from her, leaving Victoria standing alone in the center of the lobby like a defendant without counsel. Dr. Wong stepped forward. Victoria, you need to stop talking right now. But Victoria had passed the point of rational thinking. Her face was flushed, her hands shaking slightly, and her voice carried the desperate edge of someone watching their world crumble in real time. No, I've been coming to these events for 15 years. I know who belongs here and who doesn't. I don't care what business card she has or what magazine supposedly featured her. Look at her. Does she look like a billionaire CEO to you? The question hung in the air like poison gas. Every phone in the vicinity was now recording. The live stream that had started as someone's Instagram story had been picked up by local news outlets. Hashtag Techflow Summit was trending on Twitter, with increasingly horrified commentary. Amara finally spoke, her voice so quiet that everyone leaned forward to hear. You're right about one thing, Victoria. Every eye in the room locked onto her. I don't look like most CEOs. I'm too young, too black, too female, and definitely too underdressed for your standards. She paused, letting the words sink in. But that's exactly the point. She reached into her portfolio again, this time pulling out a small leather folder. Inside was her VIP Summit badge. Not the standard attendee credentials everyone else wore, but a special platinum-level access card reserved for keynote speakers and primary sponsors. But there was something else in the folder, something that made Officer Martinez's eyes widen and Senator Morrison smile grimly. A second business card. This one, with different text. Amara Davis, majority shareholder, Sterling Marketing Group. Victoria's company, the marketing firm that had organized this entire event. The company that Victoria had worked at for 12 years, clawing her way up to VP of client relations through aggressive networking and strategic cruelty. The company that Amara had quietly purchased 3 weeks ago through a shell corporation, planning to announce the acquisition at today's summit. Dr. Wong saw the card first. Her sharp intake of breath drew others to look over her shoulder. Marcus Thompson's camera caught the moment of recognition. As it rippled through the crowd, Victoria remained oblivious, still ranting about proper protocols and security measures, her voice echoing off the marble walls as her professional life disintegrated around her. And furthermore, I think we need to have a serious discussion about how these invitations are distributed in the future because clearly the screening process is inadequate. If just anyone can. Victoria, Senator Morrison's voice, cut through the monologue like a blade. Do you know who signs your paychecks? The question stopped Victoria mid-sentence. She looked around this crowd, confusion replacing anger on her face. I work for Sterling Marketing. Richard Sterling signs my. Richard Sterling sold the company 3 weeks ago, Morrison said gently, as if delivering news of a death in the family, to a private equity firm, which was acting on behalf of. She gestured toward Amara. Victoria's face went through a series of expressions, confusion, disbelief, dawning horror, and finally complete devastation. Her knees seemed to wobble slightly. That's not possible. Amara spoke again, still in that same quiet tone that somehow commanded more attention than Victoria's shouting had. It's not only possible, Victoria. It's already done. The paperwork was filed yesterday. I am now the majority owner of Sterling Marketing Group, which means she paused, letting the implications settle. I'm your boss. The lobby was so quiet you could hear the elevator cables moving in their shafts. Victoria's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Her supporters had completely abandoned her now, some actually backing away as if her career collapse might be contagious. But Amara wasn't finished. And as the new owner of Sterling Marketing, I have access to all employee records, including yours. Her eyes met Victoria's directly for the first time. 12 formal complaints filed against you for discriminatory behavior. 7 settled out of court. 3 employees who quit specifically because of your conduct. Each word hit like a hammer blow. Victoria's face had gone from flushed to ashen. So when you ask if I belong here, Amara continued, the answer is yes. I belong here because I own here. I own this event. I own the company that organized it. And as of yesterday, I own the company that employs you. The implications crashed over Victoria like a tsunami. Her career, her reputation, her future, all of it balanced on the edge of a knife held by the woman she had just publicly humiliated. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Ma'am, are you filing any charges? All eyes turned to Amara. In her hands, she held the power to destroy Victoria completely. One word from her and Victoria would face assault charges, public disgrace, and professional ruin. The crowd held its breath. The silence stretched like a taut wire, ready to snap. Victoria's breathing was audible in the marble lobby, quick and shallow, like a trapped animal. Sweat beaded along her hairline despite the hotel's perfect climate control. Amara studied Victoria's face with the detached curiosity of a scientist observing a specimen. The power dynamic had shifted so completely that even the air felt different, thinner, more electric. Charges, Amara repeated softly, as if the word was foreign to her. Officer Martinez, what would be the typical charges for someone who physically grabbed another person without consent, made racially discriminatory statements in public, and filed a false police report? Martinez consulted his notepad. Assault, harassment, potentially a civil rights violation, and filing a false report. The last one's a misdemeanor, but the others, he shrugged. Meaningfully, Victoria's legs finally gave out. She sank into one of the lobby's leather chairs, her designer purse sliding off her shoulder and hitting the floor with a sound like a gunshot. The contents: scattered lipstick, credit cards, her own business cards fanning across the marble like fallen leaves. "Please," she whispered. "I made a mistake. I didn't know who you were." "No." Amara's voice carried a weight that seemed to press down on everyone present. "You knew exactly who I was, a black woman. That was enough for you to decide I didn't belong here." Dr. Wong stepped closer, her expression torn between fascination and horror. "Amara, how long have you owned Sterling Marketing?" 3 weeks, 2 days, and approximately. Amara checked her watch. Not the Pate Philippe she'd mentioned earlier, but a simple Apple Watch that somehow looked more intimidating than any luxury timepiece. "For hours. But the acquisition wasn't announced," Marcus Thompson said, finally lowering his phone. His journalist instincts were kicking in. "There was no press release, no SEC filing that mentioned your name directly." Amara smiled for the first time since entering the hotel. It wasn't a pleasant expression. Shell companies are wonderful things. Pacific Holdings purchased Sterling Marketing for $47.3 million cash. Pacific Holdings is owned by Meridian Capital. Meridian Capital is owned by Davis Enterprises. Davis Enterprises is my family's investment firm, founded by my grandmother in 1963. She pulled out her phone and opened her Notes app, reading directly from the screen. "We also own Caldwell Hotel Management, the company that manages this building." Her eyes found the hotel manager who had been trying to blend into the wallpaper. "Sterling Communications, which handles PR for about 60% of the companies represented at this summit. And as of yesterday afternoon, Pacific Northwest Airlines, which provided charter flights for 17 of today's attendees." Each revelation hit the crowd like a physical blow. Executives began pulling out their own phones, frantically texting or Googling. The live stream viewer count had exploded past 100,000, and half Sterling Gate was now trending nationally. But Amara wasn't finished. "Oh, and we have a controlling interest in Morrison Media Group, Senator Morrison's family's newspaper chain." She nodded toward the senator, who was watching with barely concealed admiration. "Which means I have access to quite a bit of investigative reporting on employment practices in the marketing industry." Victoria's head snapped up. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that your behavior today wasn't an aberration, Victoria. It was a pattern." Amara's voice remained steady, but there was something almost surgical in her precision, "and I've been documenting patterns for a very long time." She opened another app on her phone, a secure corporate database that required biometric authentication to access. Her thumbprint unlocked files that made several executives in the crowd shift uncomfortably. Sterling Marketing's client retention rate has dropped 23% in the past 2 years. Exit interviews consistently mention toxic workplace culture and specifically name you as a contributing factor. 3 class action lawsuits were settled quietly, all involving discrimination claims against your department. Victoria's mouth moved soundlessly around the lobby. Other Sterling Marketing employees, she hadn't even noticed them in the crowd, began edging toward the exits. "But here's the interesting part," Amara continued, her tone conversational now, as if discussing the weather. "Richard Sterling knew about all of this when he decided to sell. He was hemorrhaging money on legal settlements, losing clients, facing regulatory scrutiny. He needed out fast." She turned to address the crowd directly, her voice carrying easily across the marble expanse. "So, when a mysterious buyer offered him $47.3 million for a company worth maybe $30 million on paper, he didn't ask too many questions. He was so desperate to dump his liability that he agreed to a same-day closing." Senator Morrison laughed, actually laughed, a rich, warm sound that seemed to break some of the tension. "You bought her company out from under her just to fire her properly." "Oh, Senator, firing her would be the merciful option." The words dropped into the silence like stones into still water. Victoria's face went from pale to gray. You see, Victoria, I'm not interested in revenge. I'm interested in transformation, and transformation requires comprehensive change. Amara's phone buzzed with an incoming call. She glanced at the screen. Sarah. Kim, Chief Legal Counsel. Excuse me for just a moment. She answered the call on speaker, her voice switching to crisp business mode. Sarah, what's the status? All paperwork is filed and processed. The board resolution passed unanimously 20 minutes ago. You have full operational control as of the sound of papers shuffling came through the phone. Now, excellent. And the other matters we discussed. HR has prepared the termination documents. Legal has reviewed the discrimination case files, and PR has the press release ready for your approval. Victoria's remaining color drained completely. Press release. Amara ended the call and looked directly at Victoria. Sterling Marketing Group is announcing a complete restructuring today. New management, new policies, new culture, zero tolerance for discriminatory behavior with independent oversight and regular audits. She pulled up another document on her phone. We're also announcing the creation of the Sterling Equity Fund, a $10 million initiative to support minority-owned businesses in the marketing sector, funded entirely by, let's call them, efficiency savings from our restructuring process. The crowd began to understand. This wasn't just about firing Victoria. This was about dismantling an entire system of discrimination and rebuilding it from the ground up. Dr. Wong stepped forward. The legal settlements alone would have cost more than $10 million if they'd gone to trial. Exactly. By cutting our losses strategically, we can redirect those resources toward positive change. Amara's smile was sharper now. It's amazing how much money you can find for good causes when you stop spending it on bad behavior. Victoria tried to stand, swayed, and sank back into the chair. You can't do this. I have rights. I have a contract. You had a contract, Amara corrected gently, with Sterling Marketing Group. Under Richard Sterling's ownership, new terms. Your contract had a morality clause standard in all executive agreements. Today's behavior constitutes a clear violation. She gestured to the phones still recording around the room. We have video evidence of you physically assaulting me, making racially discriminatory statements, and filing false police reports. Any employment lawyers in the country would consider this grounds for immediate termination with cause. Officer Martinez cleared his throat. Ma'am, speaking of those charges, Amara considered for a long moment. The entire lobby waited for her decision. Victoria sat slumped in the chair like a marionette with cut strings. Officer, I appreciate your thoroughness, but I think this situation has resolved itself. Sometimes the most effective justice happens outside the courtroom. Martinez nodded and closed his notepad. If you change your mind, we have everything documented. As the police officers departed, Amara turned back to Victoria, but her expression had changed. The surgical coldness was gone, replaced by something that might have been pity. Victoria, 12 years ago, you started at Sterling Marketing as an ambitious young woman trying to succeed in a difficult industry. I understand that. I respect that. But somewhere along the way, you decided that success meant keeping other people down instead of lifting yourself up. Victoria looked up for the first time since collapsing into the chair. I worked so hard. I sacrificed everything for this job. I know you did. And that's the real tragedy here. Amara's voice was gentler now, though still carrying absolute authority. You're not a bad person, Victoria. You're a hurt person who learned to hurt others. But that pattern stops today. She pulled out a manila envelope from her portfolio, something else she'd been carrying all along. This is a severance package. 6 months salary, full benefits, and a reference letter that focuses on your technical skills rather than your interpersonal challenges. It also includes information about executive coaching programs and diversity training courses that we're willing to pay for. Victoria stared at the envelope as if it might explode. There's one condition, Amara continued. A public apology. Not to me. I don't need your apology. To every person you've discriminated against, harassed, or hurt during your time at Sterling Marketing, and a commitment to doing better. The silence that followed was different from the earlier tension. It felt expectant, as if the room was holding its breath, waiting to see if redemption was possible. Victoria's hands shook as she reached for the envelope. Why are you doing this? After everything I said, Because this isn't about you, Victoria. It's about all the other Victorians out there who think discrimination is acceptable. It's about creating a world where Black women don't have to buy entire companies just to be treated with basic respect. Amara looked around the lobby, making eye contact with the executives who had been watching, filming, judging. And it's about showing everyone here that power, real power, isn't about keeping people out. It's about opening doors so wide that no one can ever close them again. The applause started slowly, just Senator Morrison clapping deliberately, each clap echoing off the marble walls. Then Dr. Wong joined in. Then Marcus Thompson. Soon the entire lobby was applauding, and the sound was thunderous. Victoria clutched the envelope and began to cry. Not the angry tears of frustration, but the deep, cleansing sobs of someone who had been carrying poison for too long and finally felt it leaving her system. But even as the crowd applauded and Victoria wept, Amara's expression remained focused because she knew something that none of them realized yet. This was just the beginning. The executive conference room on the hotel's 42nd floor offered a panoramic view of the city skyline. But no one was looking at the scenery. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed a mahogany table that could seat 30, though only 18. Executives had made it upstairs after the lobby confrontation. Victoria sat at the far end of the table, isolated like a defendant awaiting sentencing. Her earlier bravado had evaporated completely, leaving behind a hollow-eyed woman clutching tissues and the severance envelope she hadn't yet opened. Amara stood at the head of the table, a sleek laptop open before her. The wall-mounted screen displayed the TechFlow Industries logo, a simple, elegant design that somehow commanded more respect than the gaudy corporate emblems scattered around the table. "Ladies and gentlemen," she began, her voice carrying easily through the room's acoustic perfection. "Thank you for staying. I know this morning has been illuminating." Nervous chuckles rippled around the table. Dr. Wong sat closest to Amara, having clearly chosen her allegiance. Senator Morrison occupied a seat of honor near the windows, her silver hair catching the morning light like a crown. Marcus Thompson had positioned himself strategically to capture both Amara and the reactions of the other executives. His phone lay flat on the table, still recording, though the live stream had been temporarily suspended at Amara's request. "Before we begin the official summit," Amara continued, clicking to advance her presentation, "I think it's important that we address what just happened downstairs. Not the incident itself, but what it represents." The screen filled with data, cold, hard numbers that made several executives shift uncomfortably in their leather chairs. Workplace discrimination costs American businesses $64 billion annually in lost productivity, legal settlements, and employee turnover. Click companies with diverse executive leadership show 33% higher profitability and 70% higher innovation metrics. Click yet 73% of Fortune 500 companies have never had a Black female CEO. Victoria's head remained bowed, but Amara noticed she was listening intently. These aren't just statistics. They're symptoms of a system that wastes human capital on an industrial scale. Amara's tone remained conversational, but her words carried the weight of indisputable fact, and that system is costing all of you money. She clicked again. The screen showed a network diagram connecting dozens of companies. Sterling Marketing at the center with lines extending to clients, partners, and subsidiaries. "This is why I didn't just buy Sterling Marketing. I bought the ecosystem." Her pointer traced the connections. 17 of your companies use Sterling for marketing. 23 use their PR services. 41 have partnerships or contracts that run through their network. The implications sank in slowly. Several executives began calculating their own exposure, pulling out phones to text their legal teams. Dr. Wong leaned forward. "You're saying that discrimination at Sterling wasn't just Sterling's problem?" "Exactly. When Victoria discriminates against potential clients, partners, or employees, it creates ripple effects throughout the entire network. Lost opportunities, damaged relationships, legal liability that extends far beyond one company." Amara clicked to a financial breakdown that made the room go completely silent. In the past 3 years, companies in this network have paid out $127 million in discrimination settlements, not including legal fees, which add another $43 million or lost. Contracts, which our analysts estimate at $200 million in unrealized revenue. The numbers hung in the air like toxic gas. Several executives were now frantically texting, their faces pale. That's $370 million in preventable losses, Amara continued relentlessly. Money that could have been invested in R&D, expansion, employee development, or shareholder returns. Instead, it went to lawyers and settlements and public relations cleanup. Senator Morrison spoke for the first time since they'd entered the room. What are you proposing? Amara smiled, not the sharp predatory expression from downstairs, but something warmer and more collaborative. I'm proposing that we fix this together, systematically, permanently. She clicked to a new slide. The TechFlow Equity Protocol. Starting today, every company in the Sterling network will implement standardized anti-discrimination policies with independent oversight, not HR departments that report to executives, who might have their own biases, but external auditing firms with no stake in covering up problems. Click real-time monitoring systems that track hiring patterns, promotion rates, and complaint resolution. AI-powered analysis that identifies discrimination before it becomes litigation. Click mandatory unconscious bias training for all leadership with annual certification requirements. Not the usual corporate theater, but intensive evidence-based programs with measurable outcomes. The room was completely silent now. These weren't suggestions. They were requirements, and everyone present knew it. The legal framework is already in place, Amara continued. Every contract renewal, every partnership agreement, every vendor relationship will include these requirements. Companies that don't comply simply won't be part of the network. A voice from the middle of the table, James Harrison, CEO of a mid-sized logistics firm, finally broke the silence. And if we refuse? Amara's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. That's your choice, James. Absolutely your choice. But I should mention that TechFlow Industries processed $847 million in payments through our financial services division last quarter. About $23 million of that was for your company's transactions. Harrison's face went white. You're threatening to cut off our payment processing. I'm not threatening anything. I'm explaining market dynamics. TechFlow provides services to companies that share our values. If you don't share our values, there are other service providers available. Though I should mention that our rates are typically 15 to 20% below market and our reliability metrics are significantly higher. Dr. Wong had been studying the presentation intently. This isn't just about Sterling marketing, is it? You've been planning this for months. 2 years, Amara corrected. Ever since 3 of our most promising female engineers, all women of color, left TechFlow because they couldn't deal with the discrimination they faced from our clients and partners. Not from us, but from companies we worked with. She clicked to a photo. 3 young women in graduation caps, all smiling broadly. Maria Rodriguez, PhD in computer science, from MIT, now working for a competitor because one of our clients made inappropriate comments about her accent during a presentation. Click. Dr. Kim Patel, who developed the algorithm that powers our fraud detection system, left because a partner company's executive asked if she was really qualified or just a diversity hire. Click. Sarah Chun, cybersecurity expert who uncovered the vulnerabilities that saved us $50 million in potential breaches, quit after a client meeting, where she was mistaken for catering staff 3 separate times. The photos hit harder than any statistic could. These weren't abstract victims of discrimination. They were brilliant professionals whose talents had been wasted by ignorance. Each of these women represented millions of dollars in development costs, institutional knowledge, and future innovation. We lost them not because of anything TechFlow did wrong, but because we didn't do enough to protect them from the victorious stirrings of the world. Victoria flinched as if she'd been physically struck. So yes, Dr. Wong, I've been planning this for 2 years. Identifying the network connections, understanding the financial relationships, building the legal framework to create real change instead of just treating symptoms. She clicked to a new slide showing a timeline stretching 6 months into the future. Phase 1 begins today with Sterling Marketing's restructuring. Phase 2 launches next month with the Implementation of monitoring systems across all partner companies. Phase 3 introduces the independent auditing program. By the end of the quarter, every company in this network will be operating under the new protocols. Marcus Thompson finally spoke up. And if this works, what's the long-term vision? Amara's presentation advanced to a map showing connections extending across the entire country, then internationally. We scale it. TechFlow has partnerships and investments in 12 countries. If we can prove that systematic anti-discrimination measures improve profitability, and our preliminary data suggests they do, then this becomes a competitive advantage. Other networks will adopt similar protocols to remain viable. The scope of her vision was breathtaking. This wasn't just about fixing one company or even one industry. This was about fundamentally changing how business operated. The goal isn't to punish people like Victoria, Amara said, her eyes finding the broken woman at the end of the table. The goal is to create systems where the next Victoria never develops those behaviors in the first place, where discrimination becomes not just morally wrong, but economically impossible. Senator Morrison was nodding approvingly. Market-based solutions to social problems. I like it. It's the only approach that scales, Amara replied. You can't legislate hearts and minds, but you can create economic incentives that make discrimination too expensive to maintain. She closed her laptop and looked around the table, making eye contact with each executive. In turn, so, who's ready to build the future? The silence that followed wasn't uncomfortable this time. It was contemplative. Dozens of brilliant minds processing the implications, calculating the costs and benefits, imagining the possibilities. Dr. Wong was the first to speak. Wong Industries is in. Morrison Media Group supports this initiative, the senator added. One by one, voices around the table began expressing agreement. Not universal. 3 executives remained silent, clearly planning to exit the network rather than comply. But 18 companies, representing billions in revenue, had just agreed to fundamentally change how they operated. Victoria finally looked up from the severance envelope. Her voice was barely audible. What about me? All eyes turned to Amara, waiting for her response. Amara studied Victoria's tear-stained face for a long moment before responding. The conference room held its collective breath, 18 executives waiting to see how power would choose to express itself. Through mercy or justice. Victoria, Amara said finally, her voice softer than it had been all morning. What do you think should happen to you? The question caught everyone off guard. Victoria blinked rapidly, as if the concept of having a choice in her own fate was incomprehensible. I don't know. I deserve to be fired. I deserve everything that's happening to me. Her voice cracked. I became someone I don't recognize. Someone my own mother wouldn't be proud of. Amara walked around the table slowly, her footsteps muffled by the thick carpet. She stopped beside Victoria's chair, not looming over her, but positioning herself as an equal. 3 months ago, TechFlow hired a consultant named Dr. Rebecca Martinez to help us understand why we kept losing talented people. Her research found something interesting. She pulled out her phone and opened a voice recording app. People who discriminate aren't born that way. They're shaped by environments that reward competitive behavior while providing no framework for inclusive success. Dr. Martinez called it survival discrimination, hurting others because you believe resources are scarce. Victoria looked up, confusion mixing with hope in her red-rimmed eyes. Sterling Marketing's culture rewarded you for being aggressive, territorial, and exclusive. For 12 years, you climbed the ladder by keeping other people off it. The company made you into this version of yourself. Around the table, other executives began to shift uncomfortably. Several recognized their own company's cultures in Amara's description. But here's what Dr. Martinez also found. People can change when the incentive structure changes, when collaboration becomes more profitable than competition, when inclusion drives innovation instead of hindering it. Amara sat down in the chair next to Victoria, a gesture that rippled through the room like a small earthquake. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to resign from Sterling Marketing today with the severance package we discussed, but you're also going to become the first participant in our executive rehabilitation program. Dr. Wong leaned forward. Rehabilitation, 6 months of intensive training with Dr. Martinez and her team. not punishment. Education. Understanding unconscious bias. Developing inclusive leadership skills. Learning to recognize and interrupt discriminatory behavior both in yourself and others. Victoria's hands trembled as she processed the offer. You're giving me a second chance. I'm giving you the tools to earn a second chance. Amara corrected. The program isn't easy. It requires genuine self-reflection, uncomfortable realizations, and fundamental changes in how you think about success and leadership. She pulled out a tablet and showed Victoria a detailed curriculum, 12 weeks of one-on-one coaching, 8 weeks of group sessions with other executives who've made similar mistakes, 4 weeks of supervised mentoring with employees from underrepresented backgrounds. The room was completely silent. This wasn't the corporate blood sport most of them had expected. It was something entirely different. Transformative justice applied to executive behavior. And when you complete the program, Amara continued, you'll have a choice. You can take your new skills to another company, armed with a certification that proves your commitment to inclusive leadership, or, she paused, letting the anticipation build. You can come work for TechFlow as our director of inclusive culture, helping other companies implement similar transformation programs. Victoria's mouth fell open. Around the table, executives exchanged glances of amazement. The woman who had been destroying her career an hour ago was now offering her a path to redemption and possibly a better career than she'd ever imagined. Why? Victoria whispered. After everything I said, everything I did to you. Amara's smile was genuine for the first time all morning. Because changing you changes everything. Every executive you influence, every policy you help create, every company culture you help transform, it multiplies the impact exponentially. She stood and addressed the entire room. This is what systemic change looks like. Not destroying people who make mistakes, but giving them the tools to become part of the solution. Victoria's transformation story will be more powerful than any corporate diversity presentation ever could be. Senator Morrison was nodding approvingly. Turn former opponents into advocates. Brilliant. It's also practical, Amara added. Victoria knows this industry intimately. She understands the competitive pressures that create discriminatory behavior that makes her uniquely qualified to design solutions that actually work in the real world. Marcus Thompson had been quietly filming the entire exchange. This is unprecedented using restorative justice principles and corporate governance. The old model of firing discriminators and hoping the next person is better doesn't work. Amara explained it just moves the problem around. This model addresses root causes. She turned back to Victoria, who was clutching the severance envelope like a lifeline. So, what do you say, Victoria? Are you ready to become the leader you always had the potential to be? Victoria looked around the table at faces that had watched her fall and were now witnessing something impossible. Her former peers were seeing redemption, offered to someone who, by traditional standards, deserved none. Yes, she said, her voice barely audible. Then, stronger. Yes, I want to do better. I want to be better. The applause that followed was different from the thunderous ovation in the lobby. This was quieter, more thoughtful. The sound of people recognizing that they had just witnessed something transformative. But Amara wasn't finished. She had one more announcement that would cement everything they had accomplished. There's one more thing, she said, returning to her laptop. The executive rehabilitation program isn't just for Victoria. It's going to be offered to every company in our network. She clicked to a new slide showing participation statistics from pilot programs. Early results show that executives who complete the program show 89% improvement in inclusive leadership metrics. Their teams report 45% higher job satisfaction and 67% lower turnover rates. The business case was overwhelming. This wasn't just about doing the right thing. It was about doing the profitable thing. Effective immediately, completion of this program becomes a requirement for all senior leadership positions within our network. Not as punishment, but as professional development like getting an MBA, but for building inclusive, higher-forming teams. The transformation was complete. What had started as one woman's public humiliation had become the foundation for industry-wide change. And Victoria Sterling, the architect of her own downfall, was now positioned to become the face of that transformation. 6 months later, the same conference room. buzzed with a different energy. The TechFlow Equity Summit had become the most anticipated corporate event of the year, with a waiting list of over 500 companies seeking to join the network. Amara stood at the same spot where she had confronted an industry's worth of discrimination, but now she was introducing the keynote speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our Director of Inclusive Culture, Victoria Sterling. The applause was genuine as Victoria walked to the podium. Not the broken woman from that morning in the hotel lobby, but someone transformed. Her bearing was confident yet humble, her smile authentic rather than performative. 6 months ago, I was the worst version of myself, Victoria began, her voice steady and clear. I discriminated against Amara Davis because I had been taught that success meant keeping others down. I was wrong. Catastrophically, publicly, inexcusably wrong. The audience of 200 executives listened intently. Many had seen the viral footage that launched 1,000 corporate training programs and academic case studies. But Amara didn't just destroy my old life. She gave me the chance to build a better one. The executive rehabilitation program didn't just change how I work. It changed who I am. She clicked to a slide showing statistics from the pilot program. 47 executives have completed the program so far. 0 recidivism. All 47 now hold leadership positions in inclusive organizations. Together, they've influenced hiring practices affecting over 15,000 employees. The numbers told the story better than any testimonial could. This wasn't just about individual transformation. It was about systemic change at scale. Today, I'm announcing the expansion of our program internationally. Companies in 12 countries have committed to implementing these protocols, representing over $50 billion in combined revenue. From her seat in the front row, Amara watched with quiet satisfaction. The woman who had once embodied everything wrong with corporate culture had become its most effective reformer. But this isn't the end of the story, Victoria continued. It's the beginning, because real change happens when each of us decides to do better, not just for ourselves, but for everyone who comes after us. She paused, looking directly into the cameras that were live streaming to over 100,000 viewers worldwide. These touching stories of transformation prove that real-life stories can have happy endings. When we choose to hear Black stories, when we choose to change our own stories, we create life stories worth sharing. The standing ovation lasted 3 full minutes. As the summit concluded and executives filed out, many stopping to schedule their own rehabilitation programs, Amara reflected on how far they had come. The viral moment that could have destroyed careers had instead revolutionized an entire industry. Her phone buzzed with a message from Dr. Martinez. Harvard Business School wants to make this a required case study. The ripple effects are reaching Fortune 100 companies we never even contacted. Transformation, it turned out, was contagious. Now it was spreading beyond corporate boardrooms to universities, nonprofits, and government agencies. What started with one moment of confrontation had become a movement. But Amara knew the real test wasn't in conference rooms or training programs. It was in the daily interactions between people who had previously never seen each other as equals. It was in the career paths that would now be open to young women who looked like her. It was in the children who would grow up in a world where discrimination wasn't just morally wrong. It was economically impossible. The story wasn't over. In fact, it was just beginning. Your story matters. Your experiences matter. Your voice can change everything. If you've witnessed discrimination in your workplace, share your story in the comments below. If you've seen transformation happen, tell us about it. If you're ready to be part of the solution, let us know. Share this story with someone who needs to see that change is possible. Subscribe for more real-life stories of quiet power, changing the world. Hit that notification bell, because these stories of resilience and transformation happen every day, and together we can make sure they're heard. The future of inclusive leadership starts with your next decision. Make it count. Systemic change, inclusive leadership, transformation stories, quiet power, future of new generation.